Om Tava Kathamritam Tapta Jivanam Kavibhiriritam Kalmashapaham Sravanamangalam Srimadaatatam Bhuvi Grananti Ye Bhurida Jana. So today we will start our discussion on Raga Nuga Bhakti. And just as we were saying, that to understand the Raga Nuga Bhakti, it's very important to understand the concept of Lila and Yogamaya as has been described in Shrimad Bhagavatam. So in the Bhagavata, we will find that the term Lila, it refers to a pure play or spontaneous. It's a spontaneous, joyful pastime with intimate devotees, with the intimate bhaktas. The God's joyful, spontaneous pastime with the bhaktas. And it is an exchange of love between God and the devotee. So it's a very, very unique idea we find in Shrimad Bhagavatam. That God incarnates. There are two purposes. As in the Bhagavad Gita. In the Bhagavad Gita we will find that the concept of Lila we don't find there. Of course the idea of Yogamaya is there. But Yogamaya, with the help of Yogamaya, he incarnates. That idea is there, but the concept of Lila is not there. So very nicely in the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna we will find Sri Ramakrishna used to say, just like an elephant, it has two teeth. The two tusks, they are also which we can see. They're the two tusks, big tusks. It's visible. But apart from those tusks, there are some teeth which is not visible, but with which the elephant will be chewing its food. So similarly, when Avatara incarnates, there are two purposes. That's what Sri Ramakrishna nicely is explaining in the Gospel. The one is, as has been said in the Bhagavad Gita, what? Paritranaya sadhunam vinashaya cha dushkritam dharma samsthapanarthaya sambhavami yuge yuge. That to punish the miscreants and to protect the one who are the holy, the pious, the religious minded. So he incarnates again and again in the various ages. That's the purpose of his incarnation. But Sri Ramakrishna is saying this is just like that external tusk. It is visible. He comes, he punishes the miscreants, he protects the devotees. It's something which is visible, but it's another aspect of his incarnation, which actually is not as such visible. But that's the real purpose. Just the way the elephant will be chewing its food. The tusks are not serving doesn't serve any purpose as such. It chews its food with the teeth. So similarly, that the thing which is not palpably visible, which we don't understand, is that Lila. That he incarnates to enjoy that love with his devotees. That because of the God's earnest desire, it is a collective desire of devotees who were worshipping the Lord for most probably births together. And that earnestness, that as if impels the Lord to incarnate and enjoy the pastime with his devotees. As again in the Gospel we will find that what is the reason for Krishna avatar? Very nicely, that when the Lord incarnated as Rama, in the Gospel in one place we find this indication, this is indicated, that when the Lord incarnated as Rama, when he was once passing through the forest, there were various rishis who were absorbed in the contemplation of Brahman, of the self. They were totally absorbed in the contemplation of the self. And when Rama was passing, suddenly they opened their eyes and saw the form of Rama. And immediately in their pure mind, the form, the divine form, created such an yearning to commune with him. Now, how is it possible for so many rishis? There were many rishis who were all sitting there collectively meditating on Brahman, on Atman. And suddenly they open their eyes and see the form of Rama. And their heart fills with devotion. And they have the tremendous yearning to commune with the divine incarnation in the form of Rama. And to fulfill this rishis, they are also the devotees. Their wish, Sri Ramakrishna is saying, Rama again incarnated as Krishna. And all these rishis, they are the gopis, the gopas and the gopis, the incarnated. Because of the earnest desire of these devotees, the God incarnates. Sri Ramakrishna used to say nicely that initially God is the magnet and the devotee is just like an iron filing. It is he who attracts. And by the practice of bhakti, through birds together, when the bhakti becomes, the devotion becomes very intense, then that intense devotion where the devotee wants a tangible presence of the divine so that he can relate to him through love, the God, to fulfill that wish, he incarnates. He incarnates so that now the devotee can relate to him through various bhavas that we will come in the discussion of Raganuga Bhakti, through the various type of, these attitudes. They relate to God to enjoy the bliss of communion with the divine. And now what has happened? As if the devotee has become the magnet. God has become small. He has become the iron filing. He is being dragged by the love of the devotee. Such a wonderful expression we find in the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna. The scriptures become very, we can find that the exposition of the scriptures become very, very easy to understand when we try to relate it with the words of a realized soul, with avatar like Sri Ramakrishna, how nicely is describing. So with this introduction, let us enter into the discussion of the concept of Lila and Yogamaya. So what is the Lila? It is the play of the Lord. It is not his mission. That mission was Paritranaya sadhunam vinashaya cha dushkritam dharma sangsthapanarthaya sambhavami yoge yoge, as has been mentioned in the Bhagavad Gita. That is the mission. But Lila is the play. It is not his mission. That's the real intent of God. He comes to enjoy the communion with the devotees who have already purified themselves, or they have purified themselves by ages for many births. With their spiritual practice, they have purified themselves, and their love is so intense. It has become so spontaneous. And that's why God, as if is impelled to incarnate, to enjoy the communion with his devotees and thus thereby fulfill their wish. Not only that, God himself also wants. It is not just mere fulfilling the devotee's wish. As if God himself relishes that communion with his devotees. As if his only aim is to enjoy the bliss of communion with the devotees. So this word Lila we find is used frequently in the 10th book of the Bhagavata. It's a very unique idea. We find in no other scriptures this idea, thus God incarnating, coming down to this earth in flesh and bones to enjoy the communion with the divine. So in the 10th book of Bhagavata, we find this idea of this Lila. It has been frequently it has been elaborated there, where we find God is playing as a child with his friends, the Gopas and the Gopis. He is a child. He is relating to the parents with the paternal love, with the Gopas and the Gopis through friendship. So these various types of attitudes with which these devotees are relating to the divine, and he has came down to play these various roles with his devotees. So even where he is doing this? In these beautiful forests of the Vrindavan, the Vrajadham, where he is free from any sense of mission or purpose. It is a spontaneous expression. There is no such mission, no purpose. That's why we find this term is never used in the Bhagavad Gita. The idea of Yogamaya is there, but the idea of this Lila we don't find in Bhagavad Gita, where Krishna is portrayed as God playing the role of a teacher, imparting spiritual knowledge to Arjuna. There is a teacher, there is a mission, but here we find it is just the spontaneous expression of his love. There is no such sense of mission or purpose in this playtime, in his time which he has passed in Vrindavan as a small child. There we find this Lila. The idea of Lila is very, very vividly described there. Now, God incarnates. This is the idea. Then we say that we also incarnate. What is the difference between God and us? So there is a contrast, there is a difference between the God's incarnation and an ordinary Jiva's incarnation. So what's the difference? That there is a number of usages of the term Lila in the 10th book we find that suggests that Krishna has assumed the body for the sake of Lila. It is his spontaneous wish. No one has impelled him. It is that for us, our karma, what our actions we have done in our previous birth, so the results, to fructify the results of those actions, we are almost forced to incarnate. So jivas are helplessly forced to incarnate because of their karma. But God is beyond all desires. He is ever fulfilled. He is aptakama. Aptakama means who has no desire. Who has all the desires are apta, means fulfilled. He has nothing to crave for. So then what makes him to incarnate? It is just this spontaneous expression of his joy in the form of Lila. That is the only reason for his incarnation. So this is the idea we find, this incarnation, not the idea of Lila. The idea of this incarnation we find is being also indicated in the Bhagavad Gita. And there the word Yogamaya comes. This is Lila and Yogamaya. These two terms are very much interrelated. We will come we will bring into the discussion this idea, this interrelation between this Lila and Yogamaya. But this Yogamaya, that has been indicated even in the Bhagavad Gita, where we find this idea that what it is saying, what is being stated there in Bhagavad Gita, Ajopi san avyayatma bhutanam ishwaropi san prakriting swam adhishtaya sambhavami atma mayaya. Sambhavami. I come down. How I come down? Prakriting swam adhishtaya, that my prakriti, by resorting to that, by my own will, I come down. Though I am ajopi, but I am imperishable. This son avyayatma, that though I am unborn, I am the Lord of all entities, and I of the nature of imperishable nature. Avya means imperishable. Yet I appear in this world by the virtue of this Atma Maya. Atma Maya is the Yogamaya, my divine power. So now this Lila is the spontaneous expression of God's blissful nature. Just like a small child. That Lila, the idea of Lila is something very, very significant. We have to understand that what this Lila means. Now when we see a small child, as we find is yet to develop all the so-called obsessions and inhibitions. For him, life itself is an expression of joy. You'll find the child without reason is always happy. And how that happiness, that bliss finds expression, you'll find is the child is always busy. What if you give him something, he will make something, if he is sitting with this synthetic clay, he will be making so many things. If you give him Legos, he will be making so many things, and again dismantling them, again making something else. So what's the purpose of all this creation and this destruction as such? Nothing. It's just the expression of his joy. So this is the idea of Lila. So this God is Aptaram. He's self-satisfied. He requires nothing. So his decision to engage in Lila is just the playfulness. It points to the spontaneous expression of his blissful nature, just like a small child, always playful. It is not in any sense a sense of lack. For us to fulfill our desires, the sense of lack is there. So many desires are there, I have to fulfill them, and that's why we have to take birth again and again. But for God, there is no such need. It is just the spontaneous expression of his blissful nature. So, for most of us, it is an expression of his love, but what's for his bhaktas? That blissful nature that we have previously also indicated, that idea, that the best way by which the joy finds expression is love. God is one, he became many. Why? Though he is one, so that he can relate with his own creation through love. Why? Because he is by nature bliss, and that bliss finds spontaneous expression through love. And that's why he has created this universe and this all the beings, so that he can relate to them through love. And again, as we said, that love is something which has to be it has to be our own choice. If God would have made us in such a way that we are bound to love him, he would have never experienced the joy of love. Why? Then it would be something like an artificial intelligence created with the idea of unconditional love. So, if you can create an artificial intelligence, there was a movie, its name was Artificial Intelligence of Stephen Hawking. There we find this idea very nicely. This idea has been described there. There is a small child, it's actually an artificial intelligence. It has been built in such a way that it has unconditional love. But we find at last, because of some misunderstanding, we need not go to the details, the parents do not hesitate to at last just banish that child in the forest. That in the name of going for an excursion with the child, they go to some remote area and they get down from the car, and then these parents get up and start the car, keep leaving the child there in the forest. It was crying, but they never felt any pain, because they knew after it's a machine. It has been programmed. It looks like something live, but it has been programmed with that unconditional love. It's a machine. So that gave me the idea that yes, if we were also programmed that way, that we have to relate to the divine through love only, then God wouldn't have experienced that joy of communion. He wants that because his nature is bliss. So that's why he gave us this choice. You may, you may not. So we forget him, we go to the world in search of happiness, and we find that this world can never give us happiness. That's again the plan of the divine. He has made the world perfectly imperfect. Perfectly imperfect, that however we may try, it's like a dog's curly tail, it can never be straightened. At last we have to turn around, and that's what for which the God is waiting. So God comes running and is waiting that when we turn around and out of our choice we look towards the divine, we just try to commune with the divine, we try to get rid of the world, and for then he comes running, and that's the way he expresses his joy. So this is the thing, this idea is the thing which is behind the idea of this Lila. That is the expression of his love for his devotee. He has that love and he is waiting. That's why we say that the baby Krishna, you will find always the statue, it is he who is extending one of his hand. He is crawling on the floor with one hand extended, with his palms extended, as if he is asking for something. Now our idea is it is we who ask. It is our arms which is extended towards the divine, because he is the giver of all boons. He is after all the king of the kings. The all resource belongs to him. So it is he who is the giver. We are the one who are the receiver. But if we see that Gopala, the small Gopala, God in the form of the child, it is he who is extending his hand. What's the idea? He is waiting eternally for us. That when we turn around and relate to him through love. And that's the spontaneous joy, which is the spontaneous expression of his blissful nature. So for which he is waiting. So it is an expression of his love for his bhaktas, for whom he makes himself this readily available, so that they can love him through these different roles and relationships. This is according to their devotional desire. As per our temperament, some want to relate to the divine as if they are the parent, God is the child. They've tried to forget. Not only try, they actually forget because of Yogamaya, the divine nature. They really think of him as a child and try to relate to him. So and this idea which we find, there is various reference to this in the Bhagavatam. So especially in the 10th book, there are 12 books of Bhagavatam. So in the 10th book, in the 10th canto, in the 8th chapter, the 52nd verse, that what it is saying, Krishno Brahmana Adeshang Satyang Kartung Vraje Vibhu Saharama Vashangs Chakre Teshang Priting Swalilaya. So just to prove the truth of the benediction of Brahma, just as we were saying that story, as has been indicated in the Gospel, that the rishis were yearning to have a communion with the divine through some devotional relationship. And for that, they prayed to Brahma, and Brahma blessed them, as if to prove the truth of this blessing of Brahma. Krishna, along with Balarama, they incarnated and lived in this Vrindavan, in Vrajabhumi. And by his Lila in his childhood, he enchanted the residents of Vraja, of Vrindavan, who have earned the purity of unshakable bhakti over numerous lives, as just we were saying. And that's to fulfill their wish, he has incarnated and played this wonderful pastime in Vrindavan. So that's the thing which we find in the Bhagavatam. There are so many other references. Again in the same 10th book, in the 47th chapter, the 58th verse, what is being indicated? Etaha param tanubhrito bhuvi gopa vadhvo govinda eva nikhilatmani rudha bhavaha vanchanti yad bhavaviyo manayo vayamcha king brahma janmabhir ananta katharasasya. That's among all person on earth. So these we they may appear to be just the commoners, the cowherd woman, very simple ladies, village folk, but actually they are great. They have perfected this embodied life. They have perfected through many births. They have achieved the perfection of this, what is untinted love for the Lord, for Krishna, for God, for Govinda, through many births. And this pure love, their pure love is hankered after by those. Even we find that there are many who are renunciate, who fear the material existence. They are Virakat sannyasins. Virakat means who have developed this total distaste for worldly pleasures. The great sages, even they hanker for this type of pure love, which we see in the lives of these gopas and the gopis. So it is something which is something highly hankered for. Even the one who have gone beyond all these worldly attachments, clingings, even they also hanker for that. So this cowherd woman, these gopas and the gopis, they appear to be as if they're simple, but actually it is they who have perfected themselves through many births and have attained that pure love, and for them only God has incarnated and played this wonderful Lila. So for one who has tested the divine play of the infinite Lord, what is the use of taking birth as a high-class Brahmana or even the Lord Brahma himself? So that's the thing. There's all those caste distinctions, everything fall off through bhakti and bhakti alone. They mean nothing for a bhakta. As Sri Ramakrishna used to say, there is only one way by which all the distinctions can fall off, and that is through bhakti. Sri Ramakrishna used to say, and he used to give a very nice example. You know that when the rivers are flowing, there's a demarcation. It is demarcated. It is limited by the two shores. There's the two banks. The river has to flow within the two banks. But when there is flood, then what happens? All those demarcations vanishes. The land, the river, the village, everything gets filled with water. All the demarcations fall off. And Sri Ramakrishna is saying, bhakti is something like that. So all these demarcations, all the ideas of castes, all the ideas of hierarchy, big and small, they all fall off when there is this overwhelming expression of bhakti. So through bhakti alone, all the distinctions can fall off. And that type of bhakti, we find an expression only when this God incarnates to play this wonderful Lila along with his devotees who have perfected them through devotion in many births. So now we will come to the idea of this Yogamaya. What this word Yogamaya means. That with the help of Yogamaya, he comes down to play the Lila. So God incarnates. We are bound to take birth because of Gunamaya. That we are all under the spell of the three gunas, and that forces us to take birth. But Bhagavan is three gunatita. He is beyond the three gunas. Then what impels him to take birth? He, with his own Maya, he takes the help of his own Maya to incarnate. And that Maya has been termed as Yogamaya. So it is a concept which is essential to understand the term Lila. So what the Yogamaya means, it apparently appears to be, in English there is a wonderful term called oxymoron. When two words are brought together to form a single word, but those two words are having apparently contradictory meaning. So it's a figure of speech in which apparently contradictory terms appear in conjunction. So yoga and maya, these two words have almost opposite meaning. What does the term yoga means? it has some positive meaning, denoting that which connects the yogi with the innermost Atman or with Ishvara, the Supreme Atman. That's what the word yoga means, unification, that uniting with the innermost core of my being with the Atman, or if I am a Bhakta, with Ishvara. And what the term Maya means, just the opposite. It has a negative meaning, that which makes us forget of our own self or of God, isn't it? That's what the Maya means. That which, what it does, just precisely the opposite, by preventing the practitioner from realizing his or her own Atman, and also from recognizing Ishvara, the Paramatma. So that's the two are opposite terms. And in this, the two have opposite meaning. But in this word Yogamaya, these two words has been brought together. So what actually it means? This is the word Yogamaya. So how then can this oxymoron Yogamaya be rendered coherent? That it has some coherent meaning. How can we find out? So first let us try to understand the apparent similarity between Gunamaya and Yogamaya. The Maya which forces us to take birth, and the Maya resorting to which God incarnates. What's the similarity? You will find that the like Gunamaya, by which we are all deluded, ordinary beings are all deluded, Yogamaya also deludes. It indeed deludes the pure, liberated souls participating in the Lila. Very wonderful. That when, with our spiritual practice, we get rid of Gunamaya, we have purified ourselves. And then again, God, to fulfill our wish of having an intense communion with the divine, He again keeps us under the spell of His Maya. This is a different type of Maya, where He makes us forget His divine nature. Why? If I am always aware of His divine nature, of His majesty, I can never relate in love to Him. I can never relate through love, because I always have the sense that He is majestic. So that's why He again counsels. So first, through our spiritual practices, we get rid of the Gunamaya, to be again counseled in that Maya. It's a different type of Maya by which God incarnates and makes us forget His divine nature, so that we can relate to Him with that intense, pure love, devotion. So that's the wonderful idea. So Yogamaya also deludes the pure, liberated souls participating in this Lila, again with that power of concealment, so that they do not perceive the Lord, the Krishna, as Supreme Godhead. She does, why she does that? Why this Maya does this? So this Maya has been considered as a feminine. So why she does so? So she does this so that the souls can connect to Ishvara, connect with Ishvara intimately, by perceiving Him rather as their friend, lover, or child. Otherwise, if they are always aware of their majesty, they cannot relate to Him. So to relate to Him as their very own, as the child, as their friend. So He counsels again the minds of the devotee with this Maya. That's the Yogamaya. Otherwise, if souls realize Krishna's true nature as the Supreme Ishvara, they would consequently be incapable of interacting with Him in Lila, because they will be overwhelmed by His majesty. So that's the wonderful idea of this Yogamaya. So here the similarity is, both have the power of concealment, but one makes us forget of God, this Gunamaya, and here it makes us forget about the majesty of God, the majesty, the Ishvaratva, so that we can relate to Him very intimately as our own, as our very own, as our friend, as our child. So we can relate to Him. So that though it's both are concealment, but one has that, this Yogamaya has the purpose of actually communing very intensely with the divine. So this inherent, what is the distinction between the Gunamaya and Yogamaya then? That unlike that of Gunamaya, Yogamaya's power of illusion is a highly coveted. A devotee who has developed that intense love for God, he covets that, he wants that. Let God delude him with that, so that he can enjoy the bliss of communion with the divine without any such inhibitions. That after all, he is Ishwaran. It creates a sense of separateness. So that to remove that, he wants that let the Lord console him with that Yogamaya. It is highly coveted, one experienced only by the most qualified yogis. It is only those who have highly elevated yogis, they only can be blessed with that concealment of the Yogamaya. While the regular Maya can disappear only by devotion to Krishna, the divine Yogamaya can appear only by devotion to Krishna. It's very interesting. The Gunamaya disappears by the devotion to the Krishna, and then the devotion becomes more intense, more ripened, and with that ripened devotion, then what happens? This Yogamaya again appears and binds the devotee with the Lord with that intense love. So it appears again only by the devotion of Krishna. So that's the wonderful idea of Yogamaya. So now you will understand that how Yogamaya and Lila are related. That God through Yogamaya incarnates so that he can relate to his devotees with these divine pastimes, with the Lila. So here we find the idea that as if God is concealing his divinity to the devotee. But not only that, he actually sometimes even forgets that he is God. Because it is true both the ways. If God is always aware of his own majesty, then for him also it becomes difficult to relate to the divine. So he also has to forget his divinity now and then. And that too is also the role of Yogamaya. So Yogamaya even sometimes makes God forget his own supremacy. So we find that Krishna relishes these personal informal associations far more than the conventional formal worship in awe and reverence that results from the awareness of his position as the Lord and Creator of everything. That's the idea we have, that we have to relate to the divine through awe. That of course God also wants, but he relishes more this informal association of those devotees. You will find even in our day-to-day life that in your work field you may be a very a man of position, of prestige. People respect you, have a sense of reverence, and you do have a sense of relishment there. You do relish that the people respect you, adore you. But when you come back to your home and your small child relates to you with the love, he doesn't know that you are such a great person. He will jump on your lap, just try to relate through just all those childish pranks and games. Haven't we realized that gives us more joy? So that's the same idea here, that God relishes this personal informal association far more than the conventional formal worship in awe and reverence that results from the awareness of his position as Lord and Creator of everything. So Krishna doesn't want to be exclusively Ishwar, that's why. So when we come back, when an officer, a minister comes back at home, he also wants to forget for the time being that he is holding such and such position. Now he just wants to enjoy the time with his child, forgetting all those things. Similarly, the Lord also wants to, that he doesn't want to be exclusively Ishwar. He also wants to enjoy Lila with his friends as an equal or with his parents as a subordinate. That's why he wants to forget his own Ishwaratva, his own divine nature. But how could God truly play spontaneously and unceremoniously with anyone in the role of a son or a friend if he is always aware that he is really God? He cannot do that. So that's why we find even God is as if playing hide and seek with himself. He is aware of his divine nature, but now and then we find he's forgetting his real nature. That's the idea of Nara Hari. He's human as well as God. In the Bible you will find the same thing. That the idea of Jesus. Now and then there's the interplay of the Son of Man and Son of God. Jesus himself sometimes is saying himself as Son of Man. And again, he's the Son of God. This interplay of the Son of Man and Son of God. This Nara and Hari. Is a wonderful play where as if he himself is playing hide and seek with his real nature. So he becomes so involved in his Lila that he sometimes seems to forget his own supremacy. So that's the wonderful role of Yogamaya. It not only conceals the nature of the Lord to the devotee, it even conceals the nature of the Lord to the Lord himself. He forgets his divinity, comes down to relate to the divine, to this devotees in a very intimate way. So this idea we'll find this reference to of this Yogamaya in the Bhagavatam. There's many such illustrations, mainly in the 10th chapter. So these illustrations and references of Yogamaya in Bhagavatam. The Bhagavatam vividly illustrates Yogamaya's essential role in the world of Lila, where especially we find in Yashoda. When Yashoda looks into the son's mouth to see if he has eaten dirt, but sees the entire universe there instead. It's very nicely depicted in Bhagavatam. That, sometimes the children have the habit of just putting anything in their mouth. So that's how God is also playing the role of a child as the Gopala. He just puts in his mouth a lump of clay. And sometimes as we find that the children, when they take something in their mouth and the mother wants to get it out, it's not willing. Then the mother will press the cheeks so that can forcibly open the mouth. And that's what Yashoda did. Press the cheeks of the child Krishna, of Gopala, to bring out that lump of clay from his mouth. And what she sees there, when she presses the cheek and the mouth opens, she sees the entire universe, the Virata Rupa of the Lord. After all, this Lord who has become everything. So that's what she sees. And she gets overwhelmed. Now she gets overwhelmed. The idea that, the one whom I am thinking as my own child is actually the Lord of the universe. A sense of this awe and reverence develops in Yashoda. And now Krishna realizes that the purpose of his incarnation won't be fulfilled. He has came down to relish this love of this Yashodas, as the Vatsal, as this parental love, to enjoy the parental love of Yashoda. That's the purpose. So what he does, becoming enlightened as to this real nature of both herself and Krishna. In that entire creation, she sees herself too. In that lump of clay, she sees the entire creation, she sees herself. And that's how she realizes her nature, that she is the part of the whole. Lord is the entire universe, and she is also a part of that. So she realizes her real nature as well as that of Krishna. And her ability to interact with him as his mother, it will immediately get shattered. She cannot relate anymore. And instead she begins to bow down at his feet, chanting all those verses, Vedantic verses, and eulogizing him as the Supreme Being. And then what we find? Krishna immediately again deludes her. That's wonderful, this reference to this Yogamaya. Immediately again deludes her with his Yogamaya, erasing her memory of this event, so that she can again place him on her lap, nurse him, and continue with her maternal duties in pure love, thinking of him as her adorable infant, dependent on her care. So that's a wonderful idea we find in Bhagavatam. So this divine illusion, of course, is appropriate for the perfected souls. So we may also think sometimes It's good, it's not any harmful that when we are relating to our own kith and kin, children, oh, it is Krishna, to whom? That's of course is sadhana. So we shouldn't, it's a good thing to practice that way, but we shouldn't delude ourselves by thinking that this is something, the expression of Yogamaya. Because Yogamaya is something which manifests only in those perfected soul, highly perfected soul. As long as even a small tinge of worldliness is there in us, there cannot be the manifestation of Yogamaya. We can somehow imitate it for our spiritual evolution. But we shouldn't get deluded by thinking it to be Yogamaya, because it finds expression only on those who have purified themselves through many births by the practice of devotion. So the divine illusion, of course, is appropriate for the perfected souls. That's very important. Who have attained God in these ways by their past life Vaidhi Bhakti. For so many lives they have practiced, and which has resulted in this spontaneous love, and then only this Yogamaya. The divine again counsels himself with the Yogamaya to relate with his devotees through pure love. So this Bhagavatam repeatedly states that not even the celestials, even the so-called the gods, the G is a smaller G. It's not the capital G. This gods means the celestial beings. So these celestials, they also crave for this type of devotion. Even it is not, this is something very high. The most elevated, these personalities. So even the Vishnu's eternal consort, that they say Lakshmi, even Lakshmi cannot relate to his consort with this type of love and devotion, because she also have the idea of the supremacy of the this divinity of the Lord. Even she cannot even relate with this type of para bhakti, supreme devotion. So that's being indicated even in this Bhagavatam, the way the gopis relate to Krishna. It is something even aspired by Lakshmi, the consort of Vishnu, the consort. So what is being said? Then we find in again in the 10th book, the 9th chapter, the 20th verse, Nemam virincho na bhavo na srir api anga sangsraya prasadam lebhire gopi yat tat prapa vimuktitat. So this is even the goddess of fortune herself, she also craves for this type of communion with the Lord. If that's something which is not available even to her, that's being indicated in this Bhagavatam. So Yashoda was able to, let's see, Yashoda was able to chase Krishna. The God has become this small child. He's chasing Krishna in anger, spanking him. So whom the greatest yogis of all cannot reach even in their minds. The one with whom we cannot commune with in our meditation because of all the distractions. And he has taken a form, and with whom this Yashoda as the mother is relating just like any other ordinary child, chasing him, chastising him, and that's being very nicely, beautifully depicted in the Bhagavatam. Tam attayastim prashamikshya satvaras tato varurya pasashara bhitvat gopi anvadhavan nayam apa yoginam. So that's the kshamam praveshtum tapas sairitam manaha. So that's the idea which we find is being the way the Yashoda is relating to Krishna, the way even the yogis, when they try to relate to the Lord, they cannot even relate to him with their mind, what to speak of tangibly finding the manifestation of the divine in the form of the child. So that's a very high position. So this elevated, so elevated at the residents of Vraja that Krishna himself becomes subservient to their love like a wooden puppet controlled by them. So that's the wonderful idea. As is, God has become the puppet. Just as we have started today's discussion with that idea, that in the beginning, Lord is the magnet, is a big magnet, and the devotee is just like an iron filing. And when our devotion becomes very intense, that para bhakti ripens to that supreme devotion, then the devotee becomes the magnet, God becomes the iron filing. And that's the idea which we find in this, again, in Bhagavatam, that he has become just like a puppet, as if in the hands of these gopis. So, without such relationships, there cannot be any raga nuga bhakti. So, the idea of this raga nuga bhakti, which we will discuss in a few more classes, we will take to describe the various other aspects which are essential to understand the raga nuga bhakti. The first one is this idea of this Lila and Yogamaya, which we described today. So it is very important to understand this idea of this Yogamaya, the idea of this Lila, to understand the idea of this Raganuga Bhakti, which we will be taking up in the succeeding classes. So with this, today's introduction of the Raganuga Bhakti, in the form of the discussion of the concept of the Lila and Yogamaya, that we try to understand to the best of our ability. Now, in the succeeding classes, we will take some other aspects. The ideas of what bhava means, what raga means, what these are specific terms. These terms, unless we really understand, it is very difficult to understand what Raganuga Bhakti is. What raga means, what bhava means, what rasa means. So this, in the next class, we will be trying to describe these three concepts, the raga, the bhava, the rasa, what it means, before we proceed to the discussion on this Raganuga Bhakti. So with this, we stop our discussion today. Thank you all. Namaskars.